Buckle up, because we are about to plunge into three tales of terror that will leave you breathless. Get ready to explore the darkest recesses of Easter with us, where the sweet mixes with the horror. Don't waste a second, because what's about to happen will keep you awake for nights to come. Don't forget to keep the lights on and clutch your favorite stuffed rabbit tightly, because the terror is just beginning. Enjoy. During Easter in the early 2000s, I, still a teenager then, sought refuge outside my troubled home. My usual haunt was a local mall, despite its less than ideal location in a rough part of town. While not the most inviting place, it offered respite from the constant arguing at home. However, one day at the mall changed everything. The mall's exterior was rundown, with chipping paint and an unkempt appearance, almost resembling an abandoned building. Inside, the atmosphere was no better, with unsavory characters loitering around neglected stores. I wasn't sure how many businesses in the mall managed to stay open, given the lack of customers. Upon arrival, I noticed the dismal state of the place, with only a handful of patrons and no visible employees. The stores looked neglected, with dirty windows and an overall rundown appearance. Adding to the eerie atmosphere, there seemed to be electrical issues, with flickering lights and darkened sections. As I wandered, the unsettling ambience started to unnerve me. As I ventured deeper into the mall, the lack of employees and dimming lights heightened the eerie atmosphere. Eventually, I encountered a man dressed as a bunny in the center concourse. The bunny suit appeared worn out and unsettling, especially with the flickering lights casting an eerie glow. Despite feeling uneasy, I approached the figure, only to realize that there was no one inside the suit. It was empty and appeared to have been discarded. I approached the bunny figure, relieved to see another person, but it didn't respond to my greeting. Instead, it remained still in its chair, with a camera stand set up in front of it. Despite attempting to engage with it, the bunny remained silent and motionless, which unsettled me. I hesitated to take a picture with it, feeling uneasy about the situation and unsure if someone was inside the suit or if it was animatronic. I grew impatient waiting for a response from the person inside the bunny suit, so I decided to sit on its lap and take a selfie. The figure remained motionless throughout the interaction. After snapping the picture, I left the mall and headed home, hearing police sirens on the way, which I dismissed as common in the area. Later, I learned from the news that the person inside the mall bunny suit had been found dead the day before, and the mall was shut down shortly after I left. The realization haunted me, and I still feel uneasy whenever I think about the incident or see the selfie. This story was inspired by an event in 2018 at an Ocean County mall, where a person dressed as the Easter Bunny fell ill while on duty and was promptly transported to a hospital for medical care. Authorities were called to the mall around 11 a.m. on Monday in response to reports of an individual in distress. Upon arrival, they found a 35-year-old woman from Bayville who was wearing the bunny suit, experiencing a medical emergency. It remains unclear whether the woman has passed away since her hospitalization. The mall later announced that the woman would receive treatment and continue to fulfill her duties as the Easter Bunny for the remainder of the Easter season. Charlie's phone buzzed with an incoming call, the screen lighting up with Amanda's name. He hesitated for a moment before accepting the call, wondering what she might want at this hour. As he answered, Amanda's voice came through the line, concern evident in her tone. She suggested that Charlie stay in for the night, citing the recent rumors circulating in town about people going missing. Charlie, however, brushed off her worries, attributing them to the old urban legend of the Bunny Man that had been circulating for years. He didn't believe that there was any real danger lurking in the shadows. Amanda persisted, urging Charlie to reconsider his plans for the evening. She emphasized the importance of staying safe, especially with Easter just around the corner. Despite Amanda's concerns, Charlie remained adamant about venturing out. He was determined to prove that the rumors were nothing more than baseless fear-mongering. With a mix of frustration and worry, Amanda tried to dissuade Charlie from his plans, but he was already set on his course of action. As the call ended abruptly, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the pit of her stomach. She could only hope that Charlie would heed her warnings and stay safe. After ending the call with Amanda, Charlie busied himself with preparations for his late-night adventure. With his GoPro secured to his head, he set out with determination to debunk the rumors of the so-called bunny man lurking near the bridge. As he approached the bridge, Charlie's confidence wavered slightly. The darkness seemed to envelop him, and he couldn't shake the eerie feeling that he was being watched. Despite his reservations, he pressed on, determined to prove his point. Navigating the path beneath the bridge, Charlie spoke into the camera, addressing his hypothetical audience. He explained his plan to traverse the area without incident, demonstrating that there was nothing to fear. However, as he ventured further into the darkness, Charlie's nerves began to fray. The shadows seemed to dance around him, and every sound sent a shiver down his spine. Yet he pushed forward, determined to reach his goal. Finally, as he rounded a corner, Charlie caught sight of the bridge ahead. Relief flooded through him as he realized that there was no sign of the infamous Easter bunny. With a mixture of apprehension and triumph, he continued his journey, eager to complete his mission. But just as he began to relax, a sudden movement caught his eye, sending a jolt of fear through him. His heart pounding, Charlie strained to see through the darkness, his mind racing with thoughts of what could be lurking nearby. Charlie's heart raced as he filmed with his GoPro, his breath coming in gasps of fear. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A crate, nothing more. Yet, despite his attempts to convince himself that it was all a hoax, paranoia gnawed at him, and he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Attempting to dismiss his fears, Charlie resolved to push forward, convinced that there was nothing waiting for him in the dark tunnel except his own imagination. But his reassurances were shattered in an instant as the alleged serial killer emerged from the darkness, his presence confirming Charlie's worst fears. With terror gripping him, Charlie stumbled backward, his mind racked with disbelief and panic. The sound of the killer's screams echoed in his ears, prompting him to flee in terror. In that split second when the killer was catching up to him, his only thought was to disappear immediately and escape as far away as possible from the nightmare before his eyes. But although Charlie for a few minutes had managed to scurry away to escape, the serial killer caught up with him as he was intent on creating a makeshift hiding place among a pile of feces he had found among the trees. So he accepted him mercilessly, screaming like a deranged man, and killed him. This story was inspired by a horrific Easter bunny urban legend regarding the bunny man. The legend originated from two incidents in Fairfax County, Virginia, in 1970. But it's been spread throughout the Washington, D.C. and Maryland areas. The legend has many variations. Most involve a man wearing a rabbit costume who attacks people with an axe or hatchet. Most of the stories occur around Colchester Overpass, a southern railway overpass spanning Colchester Road near Clifton, Virginia, sometimes referred to as the Bunnyman Bridge. Variations of the legend vary in the Bunnyman's name, motives, and victims, and in some accounts, victims' remains being mutilated. Some believe that the Bunnyman's ghost is set to come out of his place of death each year on Easter or Halloween to commemorate his passing. In 2001, during Easter, a significant change occurred in the life of a person who grew up in an affluent family in Fresno, California. A boy I will call Paul. The family, consisting of his parents, a sister and Paul, lived in a mansion, enjoying a lifestyle in which their desires were easily satisfied due to their parents' wealth. However, upon reaching the age of 21, the parents abruptly decided to stop spoiling their children, believing it essential that they learn to take responsibility for themselves. This change included delaying inheritance until the age of 35, with the intention of teaching them the value of self-sufficiency. This sudden change in circumstances caused Paul to feel overwhelmed and restless, inducing a drastic change in his behavior. In a fit of rage, he screamed at his parents, accusing them of ruining his life by withholding his inheritance. However, his sister remained unfazed by the situation, expressing her support for their parents' decision and her desire to become self-sufficient. He couldn't comprehend her readiness to work when she knew she would inherit millions eventually. Despite his attempts to make her see his perspective, she dismissed his concerns, insisting that he needed to grow up. This left him feeling underestimated and powerless. He tried to accept the situation, knowing he had many years to wait until he could access his inheritance. However, everything changed one Easter, altering the course of events. Paul spent Easter weekend with his girlfriend and her family, enjoying a pleasant break from his own. However, upon returning home around 8 p.m., he was puzzled to find the house enveloped in darkness and silence. Despite expecting his family to still be awake, the eerie quietness scared him. As he entered the house and noticed his parents' car in the driveway, his unease grew. Investigating further, he found the interior illuminated only by faint light, making navigation difficult in the unfamiliar gloom. Paul called my family screaming, but received no response. The house was empty. It stood there in total darkness. But what made things more complicated was the presence of an unusual amount of flies hovering around the kitchen, and suddenly crazy thoughts came into the boy's mind, and he began to panic. He slowly reached out for the light switch on the wall, trying to find it in the darkness. When he finally managed to grasp the switch, he turned it on. And that's when he saw the most disturbing and horrifying sight he had ever seen in his life. On the kitchen floor was Paul's family lying motionless. His whole family had disappeared, right there in front of him. For a moment, he thought he would pass out from terror, staggered backward, but managed to stay on his feet and pull out his phone to frantically dial 911. As soon as an officer answered the call, Paul immediately shouted, "What's your emergency? Please, you have to help me. My family is on the ground. I think. Oh my God. Oh God." Suddenly, he began to vomit from severe shock. Unable to cope with the horrifying events, Paul found himself in a state of shock as the authorities arrived at the scene. Despite their efforts, it was too late to change the outcome. He was taken to the police station for interrogation, but the trauma rendered him unable to speak. Subsequent investigations uncovered Paul's involvement in orchestrating the crime by hiring a hitman in exchange for a share of his inheritance. Along with the hitman and his accomplices, Paul was arrested and later sentenced to life in prison without parole. Reflecting on his actions in a cell, Paul realized the futility of his actions and harbored a lasting resentment toward Easter. This story was inspired by a horrific Easter incident revolving around a 21-year-old rich kid named Dana. You will learn that he would not receive his $7.9 million inheritance until he was 35 years old. He then set a devious plan in motion to expedite the process. Yul, who had been living with his millionaire parents, as well as his sister Tiffany, derived a plot to take out his family. The plan took place on an Easter Sunday. The bodies of Dale Glee and Tiffany Yule were discovered in their ranch home in Fresno, California. The crime scene evidence suggested a hitman-for-hire scheme, and authorities quickly focused their investigation on their surviving son, Dane, who at the time was away with his girlfriend and her parents. Authorities were able to connect him to the crime. Dana Yule and his two accomplices were all sentenced to life without parole.